I think for brands and advertisers, the lines are really starting to blur between entertainment and shopping, and that traditional marketing funnel is like completely collapsed, right? If you can discover, research, and purchase all in like 2 clicks, like there's really not a funnel anymore.
Welcome to the Retail Agentic podcast, where we explore the intersection of retail, e-commerce, and AI agents, which we call Retail Agentic. Our mission is simple. We are shining a bright light on the new agentic AI shopping megatrend, which will disrupt the trillion-dollar digital retail market. The stakes are high. Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, Perplexity, Amazon, Apple, Meta, and Anthropic are all fighting to be the consumer AI shopping agent winner. There are going to be some tough decisions for online brands and retailers to make. What happens to checkout? How should payments work? Should you continue to invest in retail media networks? What does the world look like when over half of your traffic is not from humans, but from AI agents? These existential questions are the tip of the iceberg. On this podcast, we're talking to industry experts, analysts, and influencers to get answers to these questions, identify trends, and best practices. This is Retail Agentic, your podcast partner in navigating our AI shopping agent future. And now here's your host, Scott Wingo.
Welcome to this episode of the Retail Agentic podcast. On today's pod, my guest is Andrea Leigh. Andrea was at Amazon 10 years in a variety of category leadership roles. After that, she was VP of Strategy at IdeoClick, one of the early retail media network companies and advertising's connected to marketplaces. And today, she is the founder and CEO of Allume Group. Allume Group helps executives at brands of all sizes think through their Amazon and e-commerce strategy, retail media networks, and more. On a regular basis, they publish the Allume Insider Report, AIR. In this episode, Andrea takes us through their latest report and the big takeaways. And this may be a surprise to you, but one of the big topics is agentic commerce, our favorite topic. Andrea talks to hundreds of brands a month, and her insights have always been helpful to me as I figure out what is going on and what's the vibe in the industry. I hope you enjoy the discussion. Andrea, welcome to the Retail Agentic podcast. Excited to have you on.
I am excited to be here, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're a multi-time Jason and Scott guest, but first time on the new podcast, so it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I know all about you, and we've known each other for far too long. From an age perspective, I've enjoyed knowing you that long. But give folks a little background about, you've been in this game for quite a while. Give us some highlights of your career progression and what led you to what you're doing now.
Yeah. Well, I started my career at Amazon. I was there for 10 years, and I launched the health and personal care, beauty, and grocery categories in US, Canada, and Mexico, and spent some time working on all kinds of things in the retail side of Amazon, price matching, working with vendors, training vendor managers. I left there about 10 years ago and wanted to work more closely with brands. And so I ran an e-commerce agency called IdeoClick. We were a managed services agency that worked with about 250 consumer brands running their business on Amazon, everything from retail media to catalog and operations. And about 5 years ago, I founded the Allume Group. While I was at the agency, I discovered there was a growing need for education in this space and kind of more hands-on strategy support for brands and for those who help brands be successful. So like agencies and enablers. And I've been doing that work for about 5 years now. So we have an e-learning suite of 15 courses on digital commerce topics. And then we consult with brands on digital commerce strategy, Amazon strategy, negotiation strategy, commercial strategy, and work with consumer packaged goods companies as well as brands in other categories, sporting goods, electronics, et cetera, and have been working now on brands for about 10 years.
Okay. So there's like an education component and then a consulting kind of a component.
Yes,
Yeah. So
exactly.
got it. Can you, this is not what we came to discuss, but just out of intellectual curiosity, my understanding is you can't really negotiate with Amazon anymore because it's a bot. Basically, isn't it an AI on the other side? Isn't this part of their hands off the wheel program where?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the size. I think there are really different negotiations experiences depending on the size of the brand and its importance in the category for Amazon. And so really large brands still work with Amazon in a little bit more of a traditional sense, the way they would work with another retailer where they're assigned, a team and they work on a joint business plan together. While it's true that Amazon's a lot more data driven, really versus kind of being more relationship driven. But they still have relationships with those brands. I think if you're more of like a mid market or a growth brand on Amazon, you're definitely faced with more automation, which I think actually is in your favor in those cases if you understand how it works and how to work with it, and learn how to use kind of some of the self service technology and tools that are available to you.
Also not the main topic, but any, the big thing in the news has been the tariffs. It's kind of feels like we're on the other side of it a bit, or maybe we're not. Give us a quick tariff update. Is that still top of mind with your clients and part of the negotiations as they go in, trying to find some relief from that, or what's going on there?
Absolutely. A lot of brands who are facing, tariffs as a part of their manufacturing process or import process are certainly trying to figure out how to pass those along to Amazon. Amazon, in their last earnings call, talked about how they're willing to take on some of that burden, in theory. But of course, the devil's in the details. And I think it's really the onus is on the brands to figure out, how to prove that out, how to prove their case to Amazon. Generally Amazon wants to make sure that they're not the only one that's taking a price increase, that they've got some data to kind of prove where it's coming from, et cetera. I mean, I think the unfortunate thing at the end of the day is that for all retailers, like a lot of the tariffs are just going to get passed on to consumers in the result, and the result's going to be higher retail prices, because these companies can't financially shoulder the entire burden. So I think that's the unfortunate piece, but it's just like any negotiation with Amazon. You have to be prepared and figure out what your leverage point is, and make sure that you're approaching them in a very data driven manner.
Awesome. Cool. So that's a good warm up for our bigger topic. So you guys put out some really good data that you call, you call it AIR. So tell us what you've been doing this for a number of years now. What's the origin of the report? Where's the data come from? And then I definitely want to dig into some of the updates.
Yeah, the origin of the report it came from some of the education that we were doing, kind of more bespoke education for brands, where before you sort of start to get to some of the brass tacks of how to work on Amazon, you really need to tell the story of the shopper journey and the digital path to purchase. And that journey is changing so quickly. As you know, you're in the AI shopping space yourself with your new company, and so we started preparing kind of a module on the digital shopping trends to tee up some of our in-person workshops. And brands really liked that content, and it seemed a shame to just restrict it to the brands we were working with. So we started producing a regular report called AIR, Allume Insider Report. We call it AIR, on all the digital shopping trends. So it's kind of like a recap, that we update on a regular basis on what is happening with the digital path to purchase. Where is the shopper starting their journey? And I think especially in the last like 3 to 5 years, I've been producing this report for a long time. When I was at IdeoClick, we produced a similar product under a different name. But I think especially in the last 3 to 5 years, brands have gotten really, I guess I would say, distracted by retail media. And I mean, retail media is really important. It's, that's our advertising lever on digital marketplaces. Like, we certainly need to be focused on that. But I think in all of the focus on it, and now even some of the focus on AI shopping and agentic shopping, we kind of have we've lost sight of the shopper a little bit. And as brands are trying, especially large brands, or as they're figuring out how to budget for retail media and where it should sit in the organization, and there's like a lot to figure out to make it work. How effective is it? Can we attribute some of the offline sales to what we're spending on Amazon and Walmart.com? I think we've lost a little bit of that digital path to purchase and how the shopper is discovering our products. And so this report kind of helps orient us in what has the shopper been up to? What do they care about right now? And so we spend a couple of months preparing the report and going through like all of the industry reports that are available. We subscribe to a lot of things. We talk to a lot of industry experts, and we come up with kind of a storyline around what's happening. And so that is our air report that we're going to be talking about today, which has a little bit of an AI angle as well.
Yeah, let's jump into it. What were some of what's the narrative that you were able to put together from all the data coming out about AI shopping?
Yeah, I think we narrowed it down this first half of this year to kind of three main trends. And the first is AI assisted shopping. And we do the whole report from the perspective of the shopper. It's worth noting also this report is free. It's available for download on our website. Anyone can have access to it. So the first trend is AI, please help. So this is the idea of the AI assisted shopping experience. The second trend is show me the value. So, I mean, as you alluded to with tariffs and economic pressures that people are experiencing right now, the shopper is becoming more discerning and a little bit more value driven. But value doesn't mean what we think it means. So we'll come back to that later. And then make it fun. So this idea of content being the new commerce, with shoppers having a lot of options of where shopping as infotainment or entertainment or as a hobby, but figuring out ways to make that experience really fun for shoppers.
Let's jump into AI, please help.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this one probably is pretty obvious to most people, but right now, the data is showing that about close to 60% of shoppers have replaced their traditional search engines with Gen AI search or answer engine search for product research and discovery. And so if you think about how quickly that's happened, and you kind of like carry that forward, we used to say that 80% of purchases were digitally influenced. And now I think we're quickly getting to a point where 80% of searches are AI influenced. 61% of shoppers are using AI tools like ChatGPT for online shopping assistance. And 82% are reporting like a really high satisfaction rate with that experience. So it's speeding up the purchase journey and often leading to more purchases. So, and I have this quote from Doug Harrington, who's the CEO of Amazon stores, from the latest earnings report. And I have to agree with him when he says that we haven't seen a technology revolution as large as this since the start of the internet. I mean, there really hasn't been anything that has taken hold of consumers in quite the same way that AI has. And I mean, you could say the launch of social media, but that's really I think while obviously the usage rates of social media are super high, I think it's a specific experience and a specific occasion for people. AI has the opportunity to impact every occasion, right? And some of the experts are anticipating that traditional search traffic's going to drop about 25% by the end of the year. I think you even posted something really similar, a similar stat recently on LinkedIn. So, and it's no surprise, right? Because search-based shopping is broken and it's ripe for disruption. It's a pain in the neck. If a shopper has the option to do something besides go to Google and search for, aluminum-free deodorant or multivitamins for perimenopause, they're gonna jump on the chance to make that experience better. And I think one of the real benefits that AI assisted shopping gives us is the opportunity to negate search terms, and that's something that I think traditional search has been ripe for disruption in that regard for a long time. So if you search gluten-free, you're going to get gluten-free things, but you're also going to get things with gluten because the keyword's there. AI gives us the opportunity to refine in a more conversational way, to negate search terms, to ask for products that don't include, certain ingredients or items. And I think really shoppers are just ready for a reinvention of retail. And this is it, right? This is the opportunity.
I feel like the Amazon search experience has definitely kind of jumped the shark and gotten much worse. So there's the paradox of choice. So there's just too many products. And then I think the retail media network monetization has tipped over to the point where it's no longer like, boosting the right content, and it just is too much noise and you've lost the signal.
Yeah. And if you look at it by generation, older generations have a more of a tolerance for sort of that endless scroll versus as you ratchet down in basically age brackets, youngest generations have almost zero tolerance. Like they want to go to social media and have social media tell them exactly what to buy, right? Like I have 3 teenagers and they start their searches on TikTok. Like they're not even going to Amazon to look for products. They're definitely starting in a completely different place. I think some of the takeaways for brands and retailers are around agility. I think a lot of these legacy brands are really struggling to keep pace with these new keys to success. So, which are really thinking about whether your digital content is AI optimized, whether your D2C is site, whether you have one, and if it's AI optimized, because obviously that's one of the sources for information that AI is using. And I think that the legacy brands are taking longer to kind of pivot to that new way of thinking, whereas more challenger brands are able to be a little bit more nimble and test and learn and experiment to see what's working. And there's been a whole crop of SaaS providers out there that will show you like what is your share of voice across AI and how are you showing up in AI and what could you do to be doing a better job allowing answer engines to read, your product information. Even on Amazon, they've reinvented their search with Cosmo over the course of the last year, which is a more contextual search. And for those who aren't familiar now, it's taking in the who, what, when, where, why, and it's reading the images. And so we need to make sure our images show like a lot of diversity in who's using the product and where they're using it and how they're using it so that we can be picked up as often as possible. I also think it means retail media is going to look really different in the coming months. I mean, that's a whole ecosystem that is going to be completely turned upside down because it's so keyword based right now. And that just isn't how shoppers are. Well, first, the retail media is on the retailer platforms and AI is taking the traffic off of them. So there's that. And then also all the technology is very keyword based. And I think that's changing really quickly. Shoppers, now that they have an alternative to trying to find the right keywords to find the replacement part for their dishwasher are, they're jumping at the chance.
Do you think RMNs survive this, or do you think that the engines will ultimately have an RMN and join some of these other networks and kind of be more of an open platform in that way? Or do you have a prediction on that?
Well, I think there's too much revenue associated with it for the retailers for them to let it go. So they're going to find a way to reinvent it, whether it's, extending their ecosystem to different answer engines and putting the ads there, or finding a way to monetize retail media in a different way on site. So maybe if shoppers aren't using keyword search as much, maybe we move more toward more of the budgets and, I guess innovation in advertising happens on more of the display side. So, and audience targeting and those types of ads. So it's possible that they'll try to shift some of the advertiser budgets, but I think the advertiser budgets follow where the shoppers are. And if the shoppers are on the answer engines, the ads are going to go there. It's just a matter of who gets to collect that revenue.
So you saw the ChatGPT announcement that they're going to have a checkout. Do you view, so it's interesting. So half the people in our world I talk to, they kind of view it as like an affiliate like thing, But to me, an affiliate happens at the affiliate site, and this is going to happen at ChatGPT. To me, this is a marketplace. Is that so I think for that to work, you're going to then have to, just like Amazon, eBay, and any other marketplace, you're going to have to give OpenAI not only just a product data feed, but an inventory feed, and then you're going to get orders back. Is that how you interpret what that would be like? We're kind of like we're reading tea leaves here, but yeah.
Yeah, I saw that in your Retail Gentic newsletter, which for anyone listening who's not subscribed to, Scott puts out a great newsletter on all that's
Thanks.
happening in AI and commerce, and I really I find a lot of value in it. I think that, well, first, yes, I think that's the definition of a marketplace for sure, and I agree that these AI answer engines have the opportunity to become marketplaces, and ChatGPT is the one that's the furthest along. I think that being a successful marketplace is about more than just where the shopper can transact, however. And I do think that these answer engines have a long ways to go in becoming good at discoverability. So here's an example. You can go to ChatGPT right now and you can tell it, find me the best deal on Rainbow Light vitamins, right? And it will give you the lowest retail price. And it doesn't know how to think about um, the quantity that's included in that package. So it showed me, of course, the lowest count vitamin. It doesn't have like a per each concept of a per each. And I think that there's a lot that it's still, I think in order for answer engines to be really successful marketplaces, there's a lot of learning they have to do still to kind of get to the right place. I consistently, I consistently use ChatGPT, Perplexity, et cetera, to try to shop. And I'm consistently disappointed with that experience. So while it might help me narrow my results, or it helps me find a brand that I might not have found otherwise, like getting to an actual transaction is still really difficult. And so I think they have a long ways to go. And in that front, just in the like discoverability front and ease of shopping, I also think that the experience to date still falls really flat visually, and from I guess also like a different kind of discoverability perspective. And I think in order to be a successful marketplace, you need to be able to drive traffic to a lot of different types of products in a visually stimulating way. And I think that experience is still falling flat. So yes, I think they're marketplaces, but I also think they still have a lot of learning to do to be really effective ones for the shopper.
We could talk about this for a long time. So, and I want to get to the rest of the report. Okay, and then so you have your report, but then you're talking to brands all the time. How freaked out by this are they? Because the customers I'm talking to, they're pretty freaked out because they've seen their Google traffic plummet. Most of these challenger brands, though, if you looked at a pie chart of where their sales are coming from, the website's pretty small, and they're getting a lot from Amazon and TikTok, which are still pretty resilient. Are they just kind of keeping an eye on it, or is there a 4-alarm fire kind of going on?
Well, in some ways, I don't feel like they're as alarmed as they should be, but because they're not laying the foundation for the future of shopping. But at the same time, brands are pretty reliant on what the retailer's doing and what the tech providers are doing. I mean, they can't just invent their own marketplaces. So I guess like balancing that with what can they do right now. I mean, I think there's a lot they can do just from an optimization perspective, and that's where I am suggesting brands start. So making sure that their content is really, and we have some like a punch list in our report, but making sure content is really conversational and matches like how a user is querying, like help me find a pair of durable hiking boots that are waterproof and non-slip. You want to make sure all of that content is included in your content, making sure to improve and increase lifestyle imagery, making sure your product info is on some easy to crawl and easy to cache websites. So for a while, I think a lot of the answer engines weren't pulling kind of recent information from Amazon because it's hard to crawl. So this is where you want to dust off that D2C site and make sure you've got a lot of good taxonomy in there, and that it's easy for an answer engine to pull. And then freshness, I think, is an important part of that AI algorithm So making sure that you're continually updating your listings. So I think those are some things they can do. They can't really like affect the future of retail media. They're still going to put their money where they can. But I think also looking for opportunities for test and learns with some of these answer engines. If you've got a D2C site, there are things you can do. You can work directly with them. You can do some of the feed type work that you're working on right now. And so I think there are some things they can do. But to your point, I think you're right, Scott. Like challenger brands aren't getting all of their traffic from retail media anyway. Like I've done a few analyses for brands recently. And if you look at as an established brand versus a challenger brand, typically the established brands getting a lot, they're spending almost all of their marketing budget on retail media. They're getting almost all of their sales from it. They're heavily reliant on it, or at least they think they are. And then a challenger brand is spending almost the large balance of their marketing budget on social media, and getting a lot of their sales and a lot of their sales and interest from like TikTok, for example. And so I think those brands are a little bit lower risk for whatever erosion of search is going to happen as a result of growth of AI shopping.
Got it. Cool. Let's move on to the value-driven shopper. And you said that's not what it seems. I'm curious what that means.
It's not what it seems. So, I think, in some ways it is. So bargain hunting for sure is on the rise. 64% of shoppers report that they're seeking more value, and they're visiting multiple physical stores to find the best deals. That's up from 56% last year. 57% say they're spending more time this year searching online for the best price. So yes, looking for lower prices, and in that definition of value. And 57% of shoppers report switching brands to private label versus 46% last year. So like a lot of trading down happening. I think also private label isn't what it used to be. Those are, for a lot of retailers like Target, like those are actually established brands at this point, but, often offered at a lower price point than some of the national brands. And secondhand shopping is also on the rise. 20% of shoppers say they're increasing spending on secondhand goods. 60% of Gen Z are stating a preference for secondhand. I think this goes beyond actual price value, though, and it touches on some other values that are really important. And that's what I mean when I say value isn't what you think it is. It's touching on some values around, the circular fashion economy and reducing waste and trying to be more responsible in our consumption. And I think the younger generations have that a little more top of mind.
Which is always funny because at the same time they're doing that, and then they're buying throwaway garments from Shein. So go figure.
I know. It really kind of, we're talking out of two sides of our mouths for sure. And I love this example. As soon as some of the tariffs were announced, that same day, Cherish, which is they're like a used kind of high-end furniture and decor retailer that I follow on Instagram, they immediately put up an ad that said U.S. vintage is tariff-free. And so brands kind of in the secondhand market really taking their moment to capitalize on that. But value is not just about price. I mean, it's about all kinds of values, right? It can be about feeling more responsible as a consumer. It can be about having the type of customer service experience that you're looking for. It's about having an easy return process. It can be about a lot of different things. And 89% of shoppers stay loyal to brands that share their values. 68% are willing to pay more for them. And so I think it really comes back to first, you have to know your shopper. You have to know what their values are, and making sure that your messaging and your brand is aligned with that really well. But also, if you're straddling kind of value and values-based messaging, it's time to choose a lane. Like you've really got to be specific about what aligns most with your shopper, or risk sort of being shut out of the value chain altogether.
Yeah. Okay. And then, were there any things that, a lot of times I see data around buy now, pay later with that younger generation and I've seen this, I have teenager and mid-20s kids, they like that BNPL because they don't like to put big things on their credit card. It's a weird, it feels like they're going into debt. And they like that buy now, pay later. Do you see that behavior in the data or amongst your sample set of a couple kids?
I mean, definitely among my sample set of my kids, I think they're really trying to manage cash flow, and they don't think about credit cards kind of the same way that we did. Maybe it's because they have so much more knowledge and information about how that can get away from you really quickly. I mean, I think you and I maybe grew up in the era of like of credit, right? And that was just sort of how you put things there and then you managed your cash flow later. They're definitely very cash flow conscious. And so kind of trying to like, they delay large purchases as long as possible. I mean, they don't have as much income, but also they're really mindful of trying to amortize some of that expense as much as they can. So yeah, I could see the growth of that, being, if that's important to your shopper, if that's a core value, is being able to. And I was just on a podcast where we were talking about payments and digital payments. It's really just about knowing your shopper and what's important to them and making sure you're offering them the options that align with what matters to them.
And then what's new in the world of social commerce and entertainment?
Yeah, so our last trend was make it fun. And so really, if you think about thinking about recent purchases that you've made online, like where did you discover it? Sometimes it's even hard to say, right? It's like I ended up transacting on Amazon or in a Walmart store or at the grocery store, but I don't have any idea where I ever even learned about that brand because we're getting in so much stimuli from so many different places. But the lion's share of shoppers are saying that 82% say they are using social media for product discovery and research, and a third of shoppers have made a purchase there last year. For Gen Z in particular, that number is 50%. So a lot of shoppers enjoying the discoverability and elements of social media. And I think that TikTok Shops is insane. It's on track to be like a $17 billion business this year. The influencer marketing industry is expected to hit $7 billion this year. 60% of marketers plan to increase influencer spending this year. I think for brands and advertisers, the lines are really starting to blur between entertainment and shopping, and that traditional marketing funnel is like completely collapsed, right? If you can discover, research, and purchase all in like 2 clicks, like there's really not a funnel anymore. And I love this quote from Emily Weiss. She was the CEO of Glossier. It's kind of an old quote, but it's held up really well. The interesting thing about Amazon is they've solved buying, but in the process they've kind of killed shopping. and I think when we do workshops, we pose this question to the group and we get like there are a lot of people who agree and disagree, and it's a really good discussion. But in some ways they have killed shopping. It's a little bit less fun to doom scroll through 10,000 search results on Amazon than it is to visit a physical store.
Absolutely. Yeah. Shopping on Amazon is not fun.
Shopping on Amazon is not fun.
Does every checkout on TikTok, is it always Shopify on the back end, or do people wire up different checkouts in there?
I think that's a great question. I think you can wire up other checkouts. I mean, they've been really focused on, they've been so focused on growth, like aggressively pursuing a lot of the brands that I work with, the TikTok kind of sales team trying to grow the marketplace. But it's still really small for a lot of my brands. It's like a really small percentage of their digital sales. So I think that investments there are important, but also like it's important to be investing in a lot of experimental kinds of shopping. I wouldn't put all your eggs in the basket there yet. But I think investing in social media from an influencer perspective is really important. Like that, I mean, like I said, for challenger brands, that's where most of their investment is going and where most of their sales are coming from.
It seems like it'd be hard if I was like a supplement company or something like that. How do you find these influencers? Because you kind of have to marry the two together, right? Like as a brand, you can do some stuff, but to really make it go, you need that extra boost from an influencer.
I mean, there's so many different strategies brands can employ on this. Like if you look at a brand like Epson, they have Shaq is like their spokesperson, right? And so that's like a macro influencer strategy where you choose like for our generation, it was Jared the Subway guy. You choose one person and you put all your eggs in that basket, and then you leverage their affinity groups. I think that if you look at where most brands are successful, and particularly challenger brands, they're using some technology platforms that are available that act as like kind of a matchmaking service, so they can put the product out. The platforms allow them to do some filters on the types of influencers and their interests and their values, and then farm out the content production to like a group of like nano or micro influencers. Like content from many it's not unlike Amazon's search term bidding, where like you can pick like the laundry detergent keyword. It's going to cost you a lot of money. You're going to get a low return, or you can choose, a whole bunch of like middle range search velocity terms or long tail search velocity terms and get like almost as good of an outcome from a sales perspective and get higher profit. So a lot of them are using matchmaking services to do that and to engage with the right types of influencers. But it's interesting. I just did a competitive analysis for 2 different national brands, and we looked at them versus competition. And all the brands that we're seeing the most success on Amazon from the competitive set and the most number of branded searches. And branded searches are really important. That's like when a shopper makes a branded search on Amazon, they're really unlikely to buy anything else. Like they're probably going to buy the brand. The data shows. And so you want branded searches on Amazon because you don't have to pay for retail media. It's like free, those are high intent shoppers. The ones that had the highest number of branded searches on Amazon were the ones that had the most amount of like paid partnerships on TikTok. There was like a direct correlation between what they were doing on TikTok and the branded searches on Amazon. So I think that's a huge opportunity for national brands to kind of transition to some more of that strategy.
Interesting. Yeah, because usually Amazon's at the top of the influence tree. Like whatever you can get to happen there will flow to store and all your non-Amazon channels and whatnot. So it's interesting that in some ways and I'm sure it's the younger demographic that TikTok is kind of up at the top. Has the TikTok, potentially being banned and then forever, given another 90 days, that doesn't seem to have slowed anything down, I guess.
No, it hasn't slowed anything down. I mean, there was a moment where I think some really large global brands were kind of considering whether they should continue investing like ahead of any regulation. But if it's not TikTok, it's something else is going to pop up to replace it. I mean, for the one day that it went down, I remember my kids all downloaded some other app that all their friends were going to start using. And I don't even remember what it was, but that poor app got all the downloads, and then no one used it after that when they turned TikTok back on. And so it will be something like that. It'll just be some other form of social media that, helps, that offers engagement opportunities.
Seems like an opportunity for one of these Gen AI companies or a startup to marry the two formats to kind of take, the power of Gen AI. It'll be a better recommendation algorithm than probably what TikTok has, but then like mix in the short form fun part of it. So there's gonna be a lot of innovation on these intersections of things.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Have you played around with any of the vertical AI shopping things? Like there's one called Daydream. There's a grocery one coming out. They haven't launched yet. That's going to be a whole nother category that we're keeping a close eye on to see what's happening there. Have you seen any of those you like, or?
I've spent some time with Daydream. It's interesting. I think that there's a lot of education I think you have to give the user to figure out how to like interact with the platform. In theory, it's great. So what it does is you can like show it a photo, or you can use one of its photos, or one of its products, and you can say, yes, that shirt, but one with like balloon sleeves, or like, yes, that dress, but I want one that's more waist defined. And it allows you that refinement process, which is really cool, but it's pretty restricted to their ecosystem still, which I find a little bit frustrating. Also, it's still just a web based experience for me, at least. I don't think they have an app yet. And I think until they can really get like an install base and track kind of what's happening there, they're going to, I'm sure that's next. I mean, I'm sure that's what they're going to launch next. I like it in theory. I wonder like how much of a competitive advantage they actually have versus like that kind of technology being easily copyable or easily integrated into like ChatGPT.
Yeah. Cool. I mentioned to you when we were in the green room that I'm going to be giving a talk at Retail Club coming up here in mid-September. And I'm going to be talking about, are brand sites ultimately doomed, or are they going to be with us for a long time? Do you have when brands asking you that question? And what do you think about it?
I don't think they're doomed. I just think over the years, the role of D2C continues to evolve. So, like, it used to be kind of the main way that you got in front of the shopper if, like, you couldn't figure out how to grow your products on Amazon or something. I think then the role changed a little bit as a lot of brands struggled with their negotiations with Amazon as like a backup for, either directing the shopper there or at least doing their own fulfillment, and then being a seller on Amazon, and making sure that they have that technology capability on the back end to do order fulfillment. I think now it's the opportunity. It's really the only place that you have. I think the opportunity for the brand store is really high right now in being the most AI readable space and the biggest playground a brand has to experiment with different types of content. Like the retailer marketplaces, online marketplaces are still pretty restrictive. Like the images have to be a certain way, meet certain requirements. The bullet points have to contain certain content. You can't say this or that. You can't mention other brands. There's still a lot of, and that's just Amazon. Like Target's even more restrictive. So I think it is it's your biggest white space as a brand to really like include all your content, talk about your brand. Those sites are generally pretty easy for AI to crawl. So I think they're a great opportunity right now for like a source of truth for answer engines. And I think that's an important role they can play right now. Whether the shopper actually transacts there or not, who cares? Like you got all your information fed into the answer engine. So that's great. And I think brands should really be experimenting with their D2C sites right now from a content perspective.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity because if your site is driving a lot of transactions, you can't fiddle with the content too much because you don't want to tank the human conversion rate, right? But if you have one that's not super active, then it's a great opportunity to fill it up with the kind of more text-rich content that a consumer may get bored by, but an LM is just going to love that type of content.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of some of the space that you're in. So be interested to hear, like, have you seen any brands doing anything interesting or creative on their D2Cs to try to do a better job integrating with answer engines?
So having an area like a tabbed interface where the consumer can kind of go to almost like specifications of the product, like you're not going to lead with that because that's just like super text heavy. But the LM, it wants so much context. It would like an 80-page PDF of everything about your product, like contents and like ingredients, anything like that. You can provide every dimension of every little thing, but that would be just like terribly, painfully boring for a consumer to look at. So kind of having a way for the crawler to get to it it needs to be on the PDP. There's all these companies that are kind of saying, well, maybe we'll have this whole other thing that it looks at it. The LM's not going to do that. I do think ultimately they're going to all open up merchant centers, and it won't be the traditional feeds. It's going to be way smarter and deeper feeds, but there'll be a way to feed a bunch of information into them to make sure they have the context.
And are you noticing that the LLMs are showing any preference for D2C sites as like a source of truth?
They're pretty agnostic. They really like anything that has comparison content. So one of the best content strategies for a brand is to, if you have these influencers out there, get them to do a listicle, like top 10 vitamin supplements for, whatever condition or something like that. They love, that seems to be like, as you look at the content they like and rate as influence the highest, that's number one right now.
Yeah, that tracks. As I try to shop on ChatGPT, often the sources are like,
they love a listicle.
Technology, like I can't remember, Geek something, where they like they do a lot of listicles, right? Like kind of Consumer Report sort of style stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's like at the top of the tree, and then the they will consume that content, but that gets down into when the users at a more refined, like at the research, it may not come up, because at that you're looking to, is this, how does this compare to other offerings? But then once you're in the consideration set, that's when then the user is starting to say what I would call compatibility questions. Well, will it work with this? Is the dress made of cotton or a mix? And those types of things. That's where that content can be super helpful.
Interesting. And so that would also point to some of the comparison widgets on Amazon's, product pages that you can create too.
Yeah, That the Amazon content's not in there, so Amazon's blocking the bots. So one of the negative things with these challenger brands is because they've invested so much in TikTok and Amazon, and that's where a lot of their content lives. I think they're going to be blind to the LLMs. I don't think it's pulling that in, at least not recently.
Unless they have sounds like pretty well developed D2C sites.
Yeah. The D2C site is going to be really, you're spot on with your advice there. I strongly agree.
Cool. That's interesting.
Any, I don't want to use too much of your time. Any predictions or other thoughts that you're hearing from your large set of brands you talk to every day?
I don't know about a prediction, but just something that is like, it's not keeping me up at night because it's not really the space that I'm in, but I spoke at the Path to Purchase Retail Media Summit this summer, and it was just this entire conference of retail media professionals that all work at like different cogs in the wheel of the technology surrounding search-based advertising. And I had this thought while I was standing there in front of the audience that like, are these people going to have jobs? Like in a year or 5 years? I imagine this is just all going to transform. Like there's still going to be advertising dollars and there's still going to be the need to put it somewhere. So of course they'll have jobs, but like that specific industry is going to look dramatically different than it does today.
Yeah. And I think a harbinger for that is I know a lot of people in the SEO world, and that world is just being, decimated. And they're trying to pivot to GEO, but it's so inherently different, and the tooling and like the you can influence Google a lot, but the LLMs are not nearly as influenceable. So yeah. That's another industry that was so search based that it's having a really hard time transitioning into this new world.
Yeah, and it almost like died. Like the old form of it died and was born as it's been something new has been born.
Yeah, they'll find a place. I think I predict OpenAI is not going to do ads. Sam Altman's he's got a pretty valid reason why not to. But he also has to make like $100 billion over the next 2 years. So there's a lot of flexibility when you have a number like that. But so I think some of them will be more ad based, and there'll be plenty of ways to get your products in front of people. I think they'll have a job.
I think that the risk exists maybe more for some of in like the grocery ecosystem, some of the intermediaries like Instacart or whatever who are aggregating. They're not even really a marketplace. They're kind of a marketplace, but they're aggregating and helping the shopper discover across multiple retailers. And if you look at companies that do provide that type of a service, I think those are at risk if they're not evolving to create. Now their competition is an LLM, right? Like, and as soon as they figure out how to do some kind of a delivery across, I think that's where the real risk lies. But it'll be interesting to see if that's true, if what Sam Altman, if he stays true to his word on that. Advertising dollars, there are a lot of advertising dollars, and it goes straight to your bottom line. And we've seen how that has impacted Amazon's experience at the expense of the shopper, right? Over the years, even though Amazon claimed to be so shopper centric, now it's hard to find really what you're looking for and get around all the ads because the money was just so tempting, right?
Yeah, I think they can go a couple of years without crossing that chasm, but Google can't. So Google's going to have to figure it out. They're going to have to figure out, is there an intersection there where they can be as competitive and have as good as answers as ChatGPT, and have ads and not have it influence it so much that the consumer doesn't engage and trust it as much. So it's going to be there's a lot of like early skirmishes that are going to kind of tell us how this is going to go that we're keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, and they've kind of fumbled around with Google Shopping, like trying to figure out what value it provides and how to aggregate all those listings and allow you to filter. And I mean, I think they end up being, an initial source of product discovery sometimes, but then that's not where the transaction is happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of some of these GEO experts have found that a lot of the engines are calling into Google Shopping to get some products to then, and then they don't attribute it at all, but they're using some inputs from Google Shopping a lot of times to get the super set of things to look at, and then they narrow it down pretty fast. So that's kind of interesting.
That is interesting. I think Amazon's just trying to go head to head with the LLMs. I think they're like, you know what? Let's make our search as smart as possible so that we don't lose the shopper to an LLM. And let's give them an answer engine that's specific to product research and discovery, which is Rufus. And it'll be interesting to see if they can compete.
Yeah, Rufus has been extremely underwhelming so far.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had a different experience.
It's better than not having it, though.
It's funny to hear them talk about it because they realize their search is broken and the Rufus is better, and they have to like be very careful about how they navigate that. That innovator's dilemma is a very tricky problem for everyone to be in.
It is, and I do wonder sometimes, like the people running the show over there, I feel like they're not totally in touch with the current shopper experience. Like if you listen to the latest earnings call, there was a part of it where Andy Jassy said something about he was touting the capabilities of Alexa and the voice act, all these things, agentic stuff you can do with your voice now, and and the example he gave was, hey, Alexa, I'm having a dinner party. Like, can you turn the lights down to like this level? And I'm like, whose use case is that? Like, who has an entirely wired smart home? Who is having dinner parties and lowering the light, needing to use Alexa to lower the lights because you have so many lights that you have to go turn them all down? Like, it was just a really weird example that kind of made me wonder if they're actually solving concrete problems that consumers have right now.
Yeah. I've had Alexa Plus, and a lot of the use cases are not shopping. They're kind of like using it's the gateway to other apps is pretty interesting. So it can talk to Uber and it can book reservations and things of that nature. But again, it's kind of an interesting. I don't know how that's ringing Amazon's cash register to for me to use Open Door through Alexa. So
yeah, it's interesting.
Well, Andrea, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. Thanks for sharing all the update of the report and give us a little bit of a real-time feeling for what you're hearing from all your brands.
Thank you for having me, Scott. I learned a lot from you, as I always do, and I appreciate the conversation. And if anyone wants the report, it's free. It's on our website, allumegroup.com.
Awesome. And when it comes out next, you got to come back on and give us an update.
Absolutely.
Follow, rate, and share to stay up to date with Retailgenic, your guide to the future of AI shopping agents.